What's going on, everyone? Steven here from techmaker.tv. In this episode, we're going to look at some more metaprogramming in Ruby. This episode is going to be kind of building on the last couple of episodes we did, specifically the one on blocks and then the first part on metaprogramming, obviously. So if you didn't look at those, you might want to do that before you watch this. This one's really kind of more of an exploratory video where I want to go through some changes and some updates to the code that I was working on. I have been working on this on the side a little bit, so I want to give you a bit of a demo of what it can do now. And I don't really know where this project is going, but I just want to kind of talk you through what I've got and show you some considerations as far as cleaning up the code a bit. Before we jump in, I want to give you a brief channel update. So we're working on starting to create quite a lot more content. So you're going to see probably 2 or 3 videos per day coming out. Pretty much every day, 1 or 2 videos are going to be focused on Ruby or Ruby on Rails, which has been what I've always worked in. But we'll probably start to experiment with some other topics and kind of see what gets traction and what doesn't. I'm personally interested in data science, Python. I'm also really interested in doing some stuff with Elixir. If you have any ideas, definitely send us an email at Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, at techmaker.tv, or just leave a comment here. Also, that might just be the easiest. Whatever you want, though, is fine. Just let us know what kind of stuff you'd be interested in seeing. My wife is going to be getting a little bit more involved. She's also a software engineer, so you'll be seeing a little bit of content coming out from her over the next several weeks. And anyway, we'll just see where all this goes. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and jump in. So I mentioned Python, and this library that I've been kind of working on, this is the same thing we were doing with the rentals, and I've just started to rename things and make it a little bit more abstract. I want to show you how this works, and this works very much like, well, I don't want to do a comparison because it's nowhere near as sophisticated, not even close. But I'm trying to make this function a little bit like the pandas library from Python, which if you've ever used is a fantastic data analysis tool. So if we open up IRB and we require the data frame class here, we should be able to say, so we have, let's see, if I ls dot dot, you can see that we have this rentals, where was that? No, it's this data.csv is our rentals data, and then we also have this crime CSV. So let's try to do rentals equals data frame dot from CSV, and then we'll just give it that path. So it's dot dot slash data.csv. I don't know if it's pronounced data or data. So let's see what this thing gave us back. So we'll set that equal to df, and we'll look at the class here. So it's a data frame class. We can do all of our stuff that we were doing before, where we say like df.where neighborhood is Tribeca, and then we can do .count, and so on and so forth. I just remembered that I actually also set that equal to rentals, so we can do our df and say rentals. I'm going to look at this with crimes in a second, so I want to make sure I'm using the right variables. Okay, so there's a couple of new things that we can do. So and again, I'm sort of mirroring what I have witnessed in pandas. So what we can do here is say .mean, and take a look at this. So this is actually going to look at every single attribute and spit out the mean value for that attribute. And what's nice is we can actually give this an array of attributes. So we can say like, let's do symbols here maybe, building, age, years, I think that's YRS, let's do rent, let's do, I don't know, like has gym. And you can see that we just get back those attributes, so that's kind of cool. And what's also kind of cool is this data set stored all the true-false values as 1s and 0s, so we can effectively get a percentage by taking the average. So you can see that, like, I guess 18.5% or so of the rentals have a gym. So that's pretty nice. Let's take a look at another thing that we can do. So, and again, this is inspired by the pandas thing. So if I were to grab like a column like rent here, you can see that we get back this column object, which then has all the values stored in an array. And then we can actually take the mean of just that thing, or like min. Actually, no, we can't because I haven't defined that. So that kind of gets you caught up on what the thing does. Now I want to show you where I ran into a good refactoring opportunity. Okay, so we're using, if we go back over here, let me blow this up bigger. So if we go look here at mean and min, I mean, these methods look identical. Basically, all of this code is just, first of all, I say, okay, if there's no attributes provided, use all the attributes. So we want to get back everything if we don't provide any arguments. And then we're looping through and basically just pushing in keys and values into this hash. And then we do the exact same thing for min. So the only thing that's changing is stats.mean or stats.min here. And so I want to refactor this, and there's a ton of ways you could refactor this, but I want to kind of go through a couple of kind of interesting ones, in my opinion. And then I don't need to look at the row here, really. Well, maybe we want to look at the column. So on the column, I'm actually just defined a mean value or a mean method here, and we actually want to use the stats library that we want to develop here, and in here we would build out, you know, other things like min, max, standard deviation, median, things like that. And anyway, so I want to kind of just start, so let's dive in. So what I would like to be able to do is something along the lines of like fetch stat and then give it the adders, and then let's see, so, well, yeah, I guess we need to do that here. We need to keep this line at the top for a second as kind of a guard statement. Maybe we won't need it at the end, but then just pass in something like mean. So that would be ultimately what I would really like to do. But let's kind of refactor in that direction and then just see how we can make this work. And in the end, we're going to do some really magical stuff. So I'm going to write a private method down here at the bottom for now, and I'm going to call it this fetch stat, and it's going to take attributes, and then let's come up here and let's grab this. I guess it doesn't matter which one because they're basically identical. So we'll grab that, and then what I want to do is I'm going to expect there to be a block. And so I'm just going to say yield, and I'm going to yield this. Now, let's actually split this up in a variable just to make it more readable for now. So what we're doing, we're looping through each of our attributes, and then we convert that attribute into a symbol. And then what we're doing is we're saying like let's just say like numbers to be simple about it. We're saying numbers equals this, and then what we want to do is yield those numbers back to some block. So you'll see what I mean in a second. So, and I just want to make sure, because there's definitely some dynamic stuff happening in here. So let's say that the attribute is rent, for example. So we convert that to a symbol. Then for each row, we send row.rent, and then convert that to a floating point number. So essentially, we're going to end up with just an array of numbers which represents all of the individual rents from our selection. Okay, so then I don't know why I have this underscore here. Maybe I stole an underscore from somewhere else. Let's hope not. Okay, just double checking that this looks right. So we're going to be able to fetch stat now. So what I need to do on min, for example, is I need to say fetch stat adders, and then I can provide, let's just say values. I guess values is fine. And then we'll say stat.min values. Okay? So then let's go ahead and just delete all of that except for the top adders line. We want to keep that like that. So actually, we're already doing that here. right? So let's not even do that. Let's just get rid of this entirely. So we're going to pass in just the whatever comes through, and then the fetch stat method is going to handle that for us. So then let's go ahead and fetch stat for the mean as well. And let's see what happens. So stat.mean values. Okay, so let's go back to IRB over here. Let's quit, clear that up, and run IRB again. Let's require our data frame. I'm going to go ahead and space that out because I did that wrong. And then we'll say rentals equals data frame dot from CSV, and then it's going to be dot slash data dot CSV. Cool. So now let's try this out. So we'll just say rentals dot mean, and I got an undefined method none for nil class. So let's see what I broke. Okay. Oh, I named that wrong. So that needs to be adders. You know, I need to find a better naming system here because adders and attributes are actually synonyms, and this should probably be called like chosen attributes or something like that to be more clear. So maybe we'll rename that. Let's see here. What am I doing? I had a hotkey that I learned yesterday, shortcut, and I've already forgot it. Okay, there we go. So again, sorry, let's just cycle up here probably. Required data frame, rentals is that, and then let's do rentals dot mean. Undefined constant stat. Did you mean stats? This is just going to be a lot of typos today apparently. Stats and stats. Same deal, one more time. Hopefully this is for the win here. Okay. Required data frame, rentals is that, rentals.mean. Okay, so now we're back to working correctly. Okay, and then we can do rentals.min, and we'll get the same thing, potentially. Wrong number of arguments given 1, expected 0. Where did that happen? Stats line 7. Okay, values min. Oh, I need to do values here. So, alright, so now we should be good. One last time running through the list here. I need to actually write some tests, right? So I can just run the test instead of cycling through. Rentals min. Okay, so the minimum rent on New York City is $1,250, with a 250 square feet being the minimum size apartment that they had listed. Okay, so let's go back over to the code and talk through a couple of things. So I wanted to have this be a little bit different than this. So what I was actually hoping to be able to do, and this is actually a little bit tricky, but I want to have mean there, and I want to have min here. And then we're going to do a little bit of a magical refactoring after that if I can get it to work. And I haven't actually gotten this to work quite right yet, so let's see what we can manage. So down here, so we're passing in this symbol right here, right? And what I want to do is give this an argument of method name, like this. And then what I'm going to do down here, instead of yielding to numbers, I'm actually going to convert that into a real method. So we're going to say method name, and then what we're going to do is say .call and pass in numbers. So so first of all, this code as it is just introduce an infinite loop because I'm passing in mean, and then I'm going to end up calling mean again, so it's going to run forever and it's not going to work. So what I actually want to do is basically convert this. This is going to be a little bit wonky. So we're going to say 2s, not like that, method name.2s, and then I'm going to put stat on the end. And again, that's just to avoid a name collision with the method that's actually calling this in the first place. So, okay, so the next thing I want to do is go over to my stats class, and I'm going to turn this from a class into a module. And let's go ahead and not do that. Let's do this and line all this back up. And then what I'm going to do is say mean stat, and this is obviously not going to stay like this, but we need to kind of make it work for the moment in this weird intermediate phase, and then we'll refactor it to clean it up at the end. So we'll have this mean stat and min stat here. I think it's Sandy Metz who told me when we went to a little like work session with her, and she was saying oftentimes when you're refactoring, things get a lot uglier before they get better. So that's kind of the case here, but I kind of see where I'm going. Okay, so let's just read through this really fast and see what we're doing. So we're calling fetch stat, and we're asking for the mean. Then we're converting mean from a symbol to a string here. So we have mean underscore stat. The last thing I guess I need to do is include stats up here. And then let's give this a shot like that. So let's quit, clear, IRB, same thing. And I'm definitely going to write some tests before the next time I do anything with this. So we have rentals. Let's do rentals.mean and rentals.min. And it looks like it's basically doing what it was doing before. Okay, so that's cool. So we've got our syntax a little bit better now. Okay, so now let's get to the real magic, as it were. So what I want to do, instead of explicitly calling mean or defining mean and min like this, what I'm going to do is down here, I'm going to write a method called method missing, which some of you have probably seen before. And it's going to take a couple of arguments. So it's going to have a name, which is going to be the method name. And then it's going to also take in args. And so what I want to do is basically say fetch stat, and then I'm going to say args like this. And actually, how do I want to do that? I just want to pass it along, I guess. And then I want to say name.toSim. Okay, so let's go try this now and see what happens. So this may not work exactly as we hoped the first time, but let's give it a shot. So I've opened up a new IRB session. I'm gonna load data frame again, and let's do rentals equals. Let me just cycle up here. So rentals is data frame from CSV data CSV. Rentals.mean, wrong number of arguments given, got 1, expected 2. So that's on data frame RB line 57. Let's go check that out. So basically it's expecting 2 arguments here and it's only getting 1. Let me try this like this and see what happens. So in actual fact, let's do this because I want to make sure that I know what's going on so I can actually see. So okay, right here I'm going to put a binding.pry. This might get weird, honestly, because when I've done this before with method missing, it does get weird. Required data frame, rentals.mean. Okay, looks okay so far. What's in adders? Adders is an empty array. And then method name, what is that? Mean as a symbol. Okay, so that actually should just work. So maybe the problem was that I put splat adders, and I think I just change that? Or I put splat args instead of regular args. That throws me off sometimes, but anyway, so we're good, it looks like. So let me quit out of this and just reload it really quick. Oh boy. The terminal does not like it when you switch between regular terminal or whatever and IRB rather and pry, at least for cycling back through things. Okay, and then what do we have here? Rentals equals data frame dot from CSV data.csv. Okay, so we should be able to do rentals.min. Comparison of row with row failed. That's new. Rentals.mean. The mean works. the min does not work. So we gotta go check out what's wrong with min. Okay, comparison of row with row failed. So where should we start? Okay, so I'm going to go back up here and require pry again, and I'm just gonna leave it this time actually. This may or may not be kind of difficult actually. So let's start by going over here to min stat and putting a pry, and let's see what this does. So require my data frame. I'm sure you guys are sick of seeing that. Rentals.min. Okay, so it's actually happening before we even get there. So rentals.mean is fine. Rentals.min is not fine. You know what I wonder? I wonder if it's because rentals.min stat, row number of arguments, expected given 0, expected 1. I think it's got to do with the fact that data frame is enumerable here. And so that's why it's throwing an error on this line. So min is going to give us problems because it's supposed to be able to respond to min from enumerable. So we might not want to actually push things that are related to enumerable into the stats. So min, that's kind of weird though, right? Because if min isn't defined, then it should actually just use the enumerable one, and like it's not a missing method, I guess, is the point. So something else is going haywire. That's kind of weird. Okay, so let's actually start by figuring out where this is going wrong. So this is a little bit abnormal, but I'm gonna have to do a little bit of debugging on the episode here to figure out what the crap is going on. So let's come over here and let's reload everything and try this again with the pry in there. So rentals, let's do rentals.min again. Okay, so I'm not even hitting that fetch, which makes sense. Let's see if max works. Comparison of row with row failed. You know what this is actually? I haven't tried the min and max, like the default enumerable stuff really. I have not tried that since I swapped for having rows instead of, so I have like actually the rows are now row objects, so it doesn't know how to compare those. So I've got a couple of options here. I think I could go in and like tell it how to compare rows, which I think you can do by basically looking at the spaceship operator or something like that. But the thing is, I don't really want to. Spaceship operator means, I think if you need something to be sortable, you can define something like how do you do this? Like something like this. I cannot type all of a sudden. I don't remember how to do that off the top of my head. It's something like that. You can basically tell it, here's how to compare things. I'll look it up later. That's actually an interesting topic, but that's not what I want to do here. I think for min and max, for me to be able to continue to do this the way that I want, I'm going to have to continue to do min and max like, how do I do this? Like min, and then what was the adders equals that, and then fetch stat and all that stuff. So I think we got to keep that. So this is actually kind of an interesting, this is a very interesting problem here, because enumerable is providing min, and stats would normally provide min, right? But now it's not because it's min stat. And because I'm including, I think because I'm including stats second, it should override it. So we might be able to fix our problem by actually skipping to the next phase of refactoring. I'm sorry, I got kind of sidetracked here, but that was kind of a weird problem. So let me show you what I mean. So we're doing this method name 2s underscore stat, and the reason we were doing that is because we had a conflict at the top level. Now I don't need all of this, I just need method name right here. Okay, so now when I call min, it's going to say method name min.call, and it's going to pass in numbers. So if I were not to change, if I didn't change anything, excuse me, I would get an error because it's going to tell me min doesn't take an argument or something like that potentially. And that's because it's going to be relying on the min from enumerable, which is not working because it does not know how to compare rows. Alternatively, we can switch the naming back inside of stats, and so we have min, and we have mean, and I forgot a underscore there. Forgot to remove an underscore there. So now let's try this like this. So hopefully you followed. That was kind of confusing. So I just realized that we're gonna have to take another left turn, and the reason is, and again, this is the thing with metaprogramming. I think this is why, and also just thinking through sort of naming collisions and whatever, it can be kind of confusing because it's hard to tell what's defined where, and that freaks people out for good reason in a lot of cases. What we've done is we're trying to say method missing to call these methods, and that worked fine because we had renamed these over here to be something else. But now that we've named these mean and min again, if we call mean or min on data frame, those methods do now exist, and so now we're getting into a different problem. So we're going to end up running around in circles, and so what I want to do is actually just remove this stats module and convert this back into a class. So I didn't quite see this option earlier, and that's probably because when you get in metaprogramming mode, you confuse the crap out of yourself if you're not awesome at it, and I'm still kind of learning, to be honest. So let's go down here and turn this back into a class with these being class methods, and I think this is going to work better now. So down here, instead of doing the weird fetch stat adders method name and then converting method name into an actual method object, let's just do this. Let's say value equals stats dot send, and then let's say method name, and then let's pass in adders, or numbers rather, like that. So now it's a little bit less magical. We're not converting like a thing into a method and all this kind of stuff. Let's get rid of this binding.pry as well. So hopefully this is slightly more straightforward, and hopefully we haven't confused the bejesus out of everybody. So let's just see what this does over in the terminal, I guess, and hopefully we don't get any crazy errors this time. So real quick, we are still going to have the issue of min not doing what we want, because min and max are enumerable methods. So let's just go ahead and write a little min here, adders, and then let's see, so we need min adders max def max adders equals an array, and then we'll do fetch stat adders, and then we'll pass in min like that, and then the same thing here for max. Okay, so that was a whirlwind. Let's try it out and see where we are. So we'll do require data frame rentals equals data frame dot from CSV, and we'll do dot dot data dot CSV rentals dot min rentals dot max undefined method max for stats class. That makes sense. Let's do rentals dot mean rentals dot std for standard deviation, and we get undefined method std for stats class. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. So what we can do The min and max thing, I don't think there's an easy way around that as long as this class is indeed including enumerable. I think anything that's built into enumerable, you're going to have to override here. Otherwise, it's going to try to call min or max or, yeah, whatever you're trying to work with. So, but we've done something quite cool now. So let's go over to our column class, and right here we've defined mean. And I'm going to replace this with a method missing here as well. And let's just say what we want to do is pass. So what this is going to look like, the way this is going to get called on a column is like, so we have data frame, and then we're going to select a column like rent, and then we're going to say dot max. So there's no arguments, there's just a method name. And we're going to have to do something, and I'm not going to do it in this episode, and I may not do it in an episode, I'm not sure yet, but we're going to have to guard against things that we only want certain things to get called if the method is missing. Otherwise, we just want to default to like throw an error. So we'll do that later. But for now, I just want to get this working, and then I'm going to stop because this episode is getting a little bit long. So this is how this is going to look. So something like that, and what we want to do is basically say stats.send, and then we're going to say name.toSim, and then we're going to say values, right? Because we have the values here, that's what the column is just values. So what's cool about this? So how about let's go over here and let's define a max, and let's define a random value, and let's do values.sample, and that's enough. Okay, so let's go back to our terminal and do this whole song and dance one more time. Okay, so what I want to do is, first of all, get all my stuff required. I'm going to get my rentals into the data frame. So what I can do now is say rentals.rand, and it's going to give me a random one for each one of these, which is kind of funny. I can do rentals dot what do we do, max. So the max, what's the max rent? It's kind of interesting to think about. For some reason I'm not able to see it. That's not right, that's the min. Let me double check that over in my code over here. Yeah, so I just didn't change that, so that should be the max. Okay, so anyway, that's fixed now. But let's forget about that for a second. What we can do is, so we can get random stuff. We can also do rentals. We can select the rent, and we can also get random out of here. We can get the mean, undefined method, divide for class. So I'm going to have to write some code that converts those into values here. So that's something. I'm going to have to do that here. Sorry, I need to convert those to floating point numbers because right now they're sort of strings. I want to go through really quick what the benefit of all this is, because we've kind of done a bunch of circles on this, and I apologize. This wasn't intended to be so loopy. What we can do now is we have this data frame class, and we also have this column class, and there's different ways basically of getting data frames. So if we do a where filter basically, and we like filter down to a subset, so we can do, again, we can do rentals.where, what is it, like neighborhood, just Tribeca. So now we have this as a new data frame. So now we can call these methods on the data frame, and we can also call them on columns once I convert these to floats. So I need to fix that. And I got to think about the best way to do that. What this means is that once we get all of that sorted out, I can just come in here and add methods to this stats, and I don't have to change any other file. So that's really the reason I went through this whole process, was because I want to be able to just come into my stats class and add methods, and it just works. So it works on data frames, it works on columns, and it knows what it's supposed to do in each context. So For the data frame, it's going to spit out basically this hash with all the different keys and values, and it's also going to know how to do things like if I select the rent and then do .min, it's going to know how to find that for me. Now this min is obviously not right because it's not converting everything to floating point numbers, so we got to fix all of that. I'm going to do that off camera. I think this has gone on long enough, kind of wandering through this. This is a bit of an unusual episode. It's actually fairly difficult, and I've obviously had a hard time getting my head around some of it, but I think I'm getting somewhere interesting. Once I get the tool kind of wrapped up, I may make a tutorial on how to use it and make it into a gem or something. I might actually make a tutorial on how to make a gem, so that might be interesting. All of that said, I think that's about it for this episode. It's gone on quite a while, and it's kind of been all over the place. So anyway, I will talk to you in the next one.